Did you bring the money? Tell my dad how much we won.
Arnold, I didn't bet on the race.
What you talking about, Manny?
A great sitcom knows when to say goodbye. These shows did not get the memo. We are exposing the series that limped to the finish line with strange new characters, sad storylines, and no funny jokes left. You'll be shocked to learn which hit show ended on a dark cliffhanger that was never, ever resolved. 1. Happy Days.
Go over these steps and I want you to touch each step.
Let's fire up the jukebox for the undisputed champion of overstaying its welcome. When Happy Days first aired, it was a gentle, nostalgic comedy about the all-American Cunningham family in 1950s Milwaukee. The focus was on teenager Richie Cunningham, his family, and his high school friends. It was sweet and charming. Then, a minor character with a leather jacket and an impossibly cool demeanor, Arthur the Fonz Fonzarelli, started stealing every scene he was in. The audience went wild for him, and soon the Fonz was the star of the show. For a while, this was fantastic, rocketing Happy Days to become the most popular show in America. But the show's massive success became its curse. It ran for 11 long seasons. The original star, Ron Howard, who played Richie, left in 1980 to pursue his dream of becoming a movie director. Instead of ending the show on a high note, the producers forged ahead. The plots grew increasingly absurd, even adding a bizarre alien character named Mork from Ork in one episode. The moment everyone points to as the beginning of the end came in season 5. In an attempt to create a memorable stunt, the writers had Fonzie on a trip to California accept a dare to water ski over a confined shark. It was utterly ridiculous and so far removed from the show's humble beginnings that it became a cultural touchstone. To this day, the phrase, "jumping the shark," is used to pinpoint the exact moment a beloved show begins its irreversible decline. Happy Days limped on for 7 more years after that episode, a shadow of its former glorious self. The Happy Days universe was huge, spawning multiple spin-offs. One of them became an even bigger hit than its parent show, only to collapse when it lost one half of its iconic duo. 2. Laverne and Shirley.
Well, just try to get to the door. Go on, try to get there.
Bursting out of the Happy Days world came 2 of Fonzie's pals, Laverne DeFazio and Shirley Feeney. Their own show, Laverne and Shirley, became a cultural phenomenon. It followed the 2 best friends, a pair of wisecracking blue-collar women working at the Schatz Brewery in Milwaukee. Their dreams were simple, their friendship was unbreakable, and their talent for physical comedy was legendary. The chemistry between actresses Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams was pure magic, making the show an instant smash hit that for a time was even more popular than Happy Days. Making their dreams come true was the anthem for a generation. For 5 wonderful seasons, the show stayed true to its working-class roots. Then, the producers made a fateful decision. For season 6, they moved the entire cast and setting from Milwaukee to Burbank, California. Suddenly, Laverne and Shirley were no longer bottle cappers, but aspiring actresses trying to make it in Hollywood. The change in setting was jarring, and the show lost much of its down-to-earth charm. Things went from bad to worse when reports of behind-the-scenes friction between the 2 lead actresses began to surface. During the 8th season, Cindy Williams became pregnant, and after a dispute over her work schedule, she abruptly left the show. The network tried to continue for 1 more season with just Laverne, but it was a disaster. A show called Laverne and Shirley, with only Laverne, felt empty and sad. The magic was gone, and the once mighty hit was quietly put out of its misery. Losing a main star is often a death sentence. Our next show suffered that exact fate, but its decline started when it traded meaningful stories for cheap laughs and a silly catchphrase. 3. Good Times.
18 today, happy, bright, narrow man, and pure dynamite!
From the legendary TV producer Norman Lear, Good Times was a spin-off of the sitcom Maude and was celebrated for being one of the first sitcoms to feature a two-parent African-American family. Set in a housing project in Chicago, the show followed the struggles and triumphs of the Evans family. The parents, Florida and James, worked hard to provide for their three children, JJJ, Thelma, and Michael. The early seasons were powerful, mixing hilarious family comedy with serious, realistic stories about poverty, social issues, and family values. James Evans, the proud and strong father played by John Amos, was the unshakable core of the family. The show was a hit, especially because of the breakout popularity of Jimmy Walker, who played the lanky, goofy oldest son, JJ, and his famous catchphrase, "Dynamite." The network loved the easy laughs JJ provided, and the show began to focus more and more on his cartoonish antics. This shift reportedly caused major creative disagreements with John Amos, who felt the show was losing its important social commentary. At the end of season 3, Amos left the series, and his character James was written out of the show, having passed away in an off-screen accident. Without its strong father figure, the show became a shallow slapstick comedy. The stories got sillier, and JJ's Dynamite became a crutch. It ran for 3 more seasons, but it was a completely different show, a sad decline for a series that had started with so much purpose. Good Times was a spin-off that lost its way. Our next show was also a spin-off from a Norman Lear classic, and it ran for an incredible 11 seasons, long after its best days were behind it. 4. The Jeffersons.
You want me to insult you?
Yeah! I'll give you $20 if you do a good job.
$20.
Right.
Look, Mr. Jefferson, keep your $20. This one's on me.
We're moving on up to the East Side. The Jeffersons, a spin-off of the monumental All in the Family, was a groundbreaking series in its own right. It followed George Jefferson, the proud, ambitious, and hot-headed owner of a successful dry cleaning franchise, and his wonderfully patient and loving wife, Louise, affectionately known as Wheezy. After striking it rich, they moved from their working-class neighborhood in Queens to a deluxe apartment in a Manhattan high-rise. For years, the show was a ratings juggernaut and a critical darling, celebrated for its sharp writing, brilliant cast, and its hilarious and insightful exploration of race and class in America. Characters like their wisecracking maid, Florence, became television icons. The show aired for an astounding 11 seasons. Very few comedies can maintain their quality for that long, and The Jeffersons was no exception. As the years went on, the creative fire began to dim. The supporting cast, which was so crucial to the show's dynamic, started to disappear. The Jeffersons' son, Lionel, was first recast with a new actor and then eventually written out of the show altogether. Their neighbors and close friends, the Willises, also left the series. With fewer characters to interact with, the plots became more repetitive and less clever. The show that had once been so bold and relevant started to feel tired. The final insult came when the network abruptly canceled the series without allowing the creators to film a proper finale. After 11 years on the air, the iconic Jefferson family never even got to say a proper goodbye. It's a shame when a show doesn't get a real finale. But it's even sadder to see a beloved character's story continue in a new show that completely misses the point of what made the original great. 5. Archie Bunker's Place.
Why the hell not? You go to your father every chance you get.
I only go to you when you go to me.
All in the Family is not just a sitcom, it's a piece of television history. For 9 seasons, it was a cultural force, tackling controversial subjects with intelligence, heart, and uproarious humor. At its center was one of TV's most unforgettable characters, Archie Bunker, a loudmouthed, prejudiced, yet somehow lovable patriarch. When the actors who played his daughter and son-in-law left for their own successful spin-off, and Gene Stapleton, who played his beloved wife Edith, expressed a desire to leave, it was the perfect time to end the legendary series. Instead, the network decided to retool it. The new show was called Archie Bunker's Place. The setting shifted from the family's living room to Archie's neighborhood tavern. In the first season, Edith's role was significantly reduced. Then, at the beginning of season 2, the show delivered a devastating blow. It was revealed that Edith had passed away from a stroke off-screen. The episode where Archie quietly grieves for his wife is a masterclass in dramatic acting, but it fundamentally broke the show. The series became a somber, often depressing affair. Archie was now raising his young niece and dealing with the humdrum stories of his bar patrons. The sharp political edge of All in the Family was gone, replaced by sappy, sentimental plots. It ran for 4 seasons, but it felt like a ghost, a sad echo of the groundbreaking comedy it once was, proving that some stories should have an ending. From one legendary show's decline to another, our next entry was a brilliant war comedy that slowly transformed into something its early fans barely recognized. 6. M-A-S-H.
That's a decision I'll decide when I decide and make my decision, and that will decide it.
Set during the Korean War, M-A-S-H was unlike anything else on television. It was a sitcom set in a mobile army surgical hospital, a place of immense stress and tragedy. Yet it was brilliantly funny, using humor as a defense mechanism against the horrors of war. The show was a perfect blend of comedy and drama, with an ensemble cast of talented actors playing surgeons, nurses, and staff who became a surrogate family. For its first several seasons, it was a masterpiece, led by the wisecracking surgeon Hawkeye Pierce and his partners in chaos. The show ran for 11 seasons, longer than the actual war it depicted. As the years went by, key members of the original cast began to leave. The departures of actors like McLean Stevenson, who played the bumbling Commander Henry Blake, and Larry Linville, who played the sniveling Frank Burns, changed the show's chemistry. To fill the void, the show brought in new characters who were often more serious and noble. The tone began to shift dramatically. The sharp, cynical humor of the early years was gradually replaced by heartfelt speeches and preachy, moralistic storylines. While still a quality show, it became less of a comedy and more of a weekly drama. Many fans of the original seasons felt the show had lost its comedic edge and had become too self-important. Its finale was a record-breaking television event, but for many, the journey to get there was a long one that had strayed too far from its brilliant beginnings. Becoming too preachy can alienate an audience. Our next show started as a sweet family comedy before it began hitting its viewers over the head with heavy-handed lessons. 7. Different Strokes.
You've made quite an impression on him.
Yes, he just asked me to marry him.
What you talking about, Mrs. Gale?
The premise of Different Strokes was pure 80s sitcom gold. A wealthy and kind white widower, Philip Drummond, honors the last wish of his late housekeeper by adopting her 2 young African-American sons, Arnold and Willis. The boys move from Harlem to a luxurious Park Avenue penthouse, leading to all sorts of comedic and heartwarming cultural clashes. The show was an instant smash, largely due to the immense charm of its child stars, particularly the pint-sized Gary Coleman as Arnold. His adorable skepticism and iconic catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis?" Swing made him one of the biggest stars on television. For its first few seasons, the show was a delightful family comedy about love, acceptance, and a family coming together. But as the child actors began to grow up, the writers struggled to find new stories for them. Their solution was to turn the show into a platform for very special episodes. Week after week, the series abandoned its light-hearted tone to lecture its audience about incredibly serious issues. The show clumsily tackled topics ranging from substance abuse to child predators to eating disorders. While the intentions may have been good, the execution was often awkward, preachy, and completely out of tune with the show's original spirit. The ratings fell, and NBC canceled it after 7 seasons. In a strange move, the rival network ABC picked it up for one last, low-budget season. By then, the show was a tired, grim affair, a classic example of a sitcom that forgot its primary job was to make people laugh. Different Strokes had a spin-off that became an even bigger hit, but it too suffered from staying on the air long past its prime, especially after losing its beloved mother figure. 8. The Facts of Life.
Doctor prescribed some medication, and if I avoid excessive aggravation, I'll live. Unless I get hit by a truck.
Spinning off from Different Strokes, The Facts of Life followed the Drummond family's former housekeeper, Mrs. Edna Garrett, as she takes a new job as a house mother at the prestigious Eastland School for Girls. The show quickly focused on 4 of the students in her care: the wealthy and vain Blair, the gossipy Tootie, the aspiring writer Natalie, and the tough motorcycle-riding Joe. For years, the show was a ratings powerhouse, resonating with a huge audience as it followed the girls through their teenage trials and tribulations. The bond between the 4 girls and their warm, wise mentor, Mrs. Garrett, was the heart and soul of the series. The show ran for 9 seasons, and the first signs of trouble appeared after the girls graduated from high school. To keep the main cast together, the writers had them all decide not to go their separate ways. Instead, they moved in together and opened a gourmet food shop called Edna's Edibles. The plot started to become repetitive, but the fatal blow came in 1986 when actress Charlotte Rae, who played Mrs. Garrett, decided to leave the series. Her character was the glue that held everything together. The network replaced her with a new house mother, Mrs. Garrett's sister, played by the famous actress Cloris Leachman. Despite Leachman's talent, the chemistry was never the same. The show had lost its warm maternal center and felt adrift. It limped along for 2 more long seasons, but the magic was gone, proving that sometimes you really can't go home again. Losing a maternal figure can be devastating for a sitcom. Our next show was a huge hit that revolved around a diner crew, but it was never the same after its most popular waitress said goodbye. 9. Alice.
Where did you get that?
From Roger. I traded my electric guitar for it.
You what?
He traded his
I heard him!
Based on an Oscar-winning Martin Scorsese film, the sitcom Alice had a strong and relatable premise. A recently widowed woman named Alice Hyatt is driving across the country with her young son, hoping to make it as a singer in Los Angeles. When her car breaks down in Phoenix, she takes a job as a waitress at a roadside diner to make ends meet. The show centered on Alice's friendships with her 2 fellow waitresses, the ditzy, man-crazy Vera and the sharp-tongued, sassy Southern belle, Florence Jean Flo Castleberry. The chemistry of the ensemble cast, including the grumpy diner owner Mel, made the show a top 10 hit. Flo, with her iconic catchphrase, "Kiss my grits." Swing became the show's breakout star. She was so popular that, after 4 seasons, she was given her own spin-off series. This is where the trouble began for Alice. Losing its most dynamic and hilarious character left a massive hole in the show. The producers tried to fill it by bringing in other actresses to play similar sassy waitress roles, but none of them could replicate the unique spark that Polly Holliday brought to Flo. The show continued to run for 5 more seasons after Flo's departure, for a total of 9 seasons. The storylines became stale and repetitive, mostly revolving around the daily grind at Mel's diner. The once sharp comedy became bland and predictable, a clear case of a show that kept the doors open long after the best items were off the menu. Losing a star is one thing, but our next show lost its central father figure and then changed its entire setting, becoming a completely different and far worse series. 10. Gimme a Break.
It's awful hard for Nell to stick to her diet when you're stuffing your face like that.
I'm not stuffing my face.
That's right. He's eating for 2, in case he gets pregnant.
Gimme a Break was built around the immense talents of its star, the singer and actress Nell Carter. She played Nell Harper, a woman who, as a favor to her dying friend, agrees to move in and become a housekeeper for the friend's husband, a police chief, and his 3 young daughters. Nell was more than just a housekeeper, she was a force of nature. She was funny, wise, tough, and became a loving and indispensable mother figure to the 3 girls who had just lost their own mom. The show was a consistent ratings success for years, thanks to Nell Carter's powerhouse performance and the heartwarming family dynamic. The show ran for 6 seasons, and the decline began in its later years with a series of drastic and ill-advised changes. First, the character of the father, Police Chief Kaniski, was written out of the show with the explanation that he had passed away. This cast a sad shadow over the once light-hearted comedy. Then the writers decided to move the entire show from the fictional town of Glen Lawn, California, all the way to New York City. The 2 older daughters were largely written out, and the plot now focused on Nell and the youngest daughter trying to make it in the big city. They even added a new annoying child character for Nell to take care of. By its final season, the show was completely unrecognizable. The warm, family-focused sitcom had become a generic show about wacky neighbors in a New York apartment building. It had lost everything that once made it special. Changing the whole premise of a show is a desperate move. Our next series started with a bizarre premise and then made it even weirder in a failed attempt to keep things fresh. 11. Mork and Mindy.
Why don't you show Mindy where you tucked away all those little emotions, huh?
Mayday! 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 All systems overload! Fall back to fence line B!
Emerging from a guest spot on Happy Days, the alien character Mork from the planet Ork was so instantly popular that he got his own show. Mork and Mindy was the perfect vehicle for the brilliant, chaotic genius of a young Robin Williams. The series followed Mork as he was sent to Earth to study human behavior. He moves in with a kind, down-to-earth woman named Mindy McConnell, and the comedy came from Mork's hilarious attempts to understand human customs, all while reporting back to his unseen leader, Orson. The first season was a ratings explosion, a true television event powered by Williams' incredible improvisational skills. The network, however, got nervous. Fearing the show was too focused on an adult audience, they decided to retool it for Season 2 to appeal more to kids. They fired several key supporting actors and shifted the show's focus from wild comedy to teaching serious moral lessons. The fun was gone and the ratings plummeted. The writers scrambled to fix their mistake, but the show never fully recovered. For the 4th and final season, they made their most desperate and bizarre move yet. They had Mork and Mindy get married, and since Mork's species laid eggs, they had a child. But this was no ordinary baby. Their child hatched as a full-grown man, played by another legendary comedian, Jonathan Winters. It was strange, confusing, and not very funny. The once brilliant sitcom had devolved into a surreal mess, a sad end for a show that started with so much promise. An alien sitcom is a tough act to follow, but our next show also featured an extraterrestrial lead and a gimmick that wore out its welcome before a shockingly dark finale. 12. ALF.
Why are we moving out of a house we do like so you can keep a job you don't like?
I don't know.
The 1980s had some truly strange sitcom ideas, and ALF might be the strangest of them all. The story begins when a furry, sarcastic alien from the planet Melmac, whose real name is Gordon Shumway, crashes his spaceship into the garage of the Tanner family, a quiet, typical suburban household. The Tanners name him ALF, which stands for Alien Life Form, and agree to hide him from the government's alien task force. The comedy came from the culture clash, ALF's attempts to adapt to Earth life, and his constant obsessive desire to eat the family's pet cat, Lucky. Surprisingly, this oddball show became a massive pop culture phenomenon. For a couple of seasons, it was a huge hit, spawning merchandise and a cartoon series. But the central gimmick could only last for so long. The plots became incredibly repetitive, almost always revolving around a close call where ALF is nearly discovered by a nosy neighbor or a visitor. Behind the scenes, the production was notoriously difficult due to the technical demands of operating the ALF puppet, which created a tense atmosphere for the actors. After 4 seasons, the writers decided to shake things up with a major cliffhanger. In the final episode, ALF is about to be rescued by his fellow Melmatians, but he is instead captured by the alien task force. The screen fades to black with the words, "To be continued." The creators expected to resolve this in a 5th season, but the network canceled the show. The story ended right there, with the beloved family hero captured and presumably doomed, a stunningly bleak end to a show that had already run out of steam. A cute puppet is one kind of gimmick. Our next show was built entirely around the gimmick of a cute kid, a premise with a built-in expiration date. 13. Webster.
Webster, what do you call George?
I call him George.
Right. Why do you call him George?
'Cause it's his name.
In the 1980s, there was a peculiar trend of sitcoms featuring small, adorable African-American children being adopted by wealthy white families. The most famous was Different Strokes, but right behind it was Webster. This show centered on a 7-year-old boy named Webster Long, whose parents are killed in a car accident. He is then taken in by his godfather, a former professional football player named George Papadopoulos, and his wife Catherine, a high society psychologist. The entire show was created as a vehicle for its tiny star, Emmanuel Lewis, whose charming personality and small stature made him an instant star. The first few seasons were a sweet and heartwarming success. The comedy and drama came from Webster adjusting to his new, privileged life, and his new parents learning how to raise a child. But the show's central appeal was almost entirely based on one thing: Webster's cuteness. The problem, of course, is that children do not stay cute and small forever. As Emmanuel Lewis grew into a teenager, the fundamental premise of the show began to fall apart. The writers struggled to find new things for him to do. The plots became increasingly silly, involving the family opening a diner and dealing with a long-lost uncle. The show ran for 6 long seasons, and by the end, it felt tired and outdated. It was a show built on a gimmick, and once that gimmick expired, it had absolutely nothing left to offer. Yet, it kept on going. Adding a kid can be a gimmick, but sometimes it's a sign of a show that's already in trouble. Our next family sitcom was a huge hit before it tried to freshen things up by adding a new kid to the mix. 14. Growing Pains.
No, I was raised Presbyterian. That's a boat race. Well, looking at you makes my heart race.
Growing Pains was the quintessential 1980s family sitcom. It followed the Seaver family, who lived on Long Island, New York. The dad, Jason, was a psychiatrist who worked from home, while the mom, Maggie, was re-entering the workforce as a journalist. They had 3 children, the brainy and responsible Carol, the mischievous younger brother Ben, and the charming, troublemaking oldest son, Mike. The show became an immediate sensation, largely due to the breakout popularity of Kirk Cameron, who played Mike. He became one of the biggest teen idols of the decade, his face plastered on the cover of every teen magazine. The show was a top 20 hit for years, offering warm, funny, and relatable stories about family life. But after 5 seasons, the show started showing its age. First came the classic sitcom trick for a series running out of ideas. They added a new baby, Chrissy. Then, as Kirk Cameron grew older, his real-life devout religious beliefs reportedly began to clash with some of the show's more mature storylines, creating some tension on the set. But the clearest sign that the show was past its prime came in its 7th and final season, when they added yet another new character. A homeless teenager named Luke Brower, played by a very young and then unknown Leonardo DiCaprio, comes to live with the Seavers. While DiCaprio was a fantastic young actor, his gritty character felt completely out of place in the light-hearted world of the Sievers. The show had lost its focus on the core family that audiences fell in love with, and it was clear its growing pains had lasted a season too long. From one show with a gimmick to another, our next entry was built on a single joke that had stretched for 8 seasons, long after a major star's departure. 15. Three's Company.
Linda, have you seen my new eyeliner pencil?
Oh, I think it's in the medicine chest.
Oh, thanks.
The entire premise of Three's Company rested on a wacky misunderstanding, a staple of classic farce comedy. A young culinary student named Jack Tripper, played by the brilliant physical comedian John Ritter, desperately needs a place to live. He finds the perfect apartment, but it's shared by 2 single young women, Janet Wood and Chrissy Snow. In the 1970s, this kind of co-ed living arrangement was seen as scandalous by older generations. To get their grumpy, conservative landlord, Mr. Roper, to approve, they tell him a single white lie, that Jack is gay. This lie became the engine for virtually every single plot for 8 seasons. Every week, Jack would find himself in a situation where he had to frantically uphold the charade, leading to endless door slamming, suggestive humor, and zany mix-ups. For the first 5 seasons, this formula worked beautifully. The show was a ratings titan thanks to the undeniable chemistry of its 3 leads, Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, and Suzanne Summers. But the one-note joke began to feel repetitive. Then, a major behind-the-scenes drama erupted. Suzanne Summers, who played the iconic dumb blonde Chrissy, demanded a massive pay raise that would have put her on par with John Ritter. The network flatly refused and fired her. Her character was replaced first by her clumsy cousin Cindy and then by a brainy nurse named Terry. The magic of the original trio was gone. The show limped on for 3 more seasons, with Ritter's comedic genius forced to carry the entire series on his shoulders. By the end, the joke wasn't just old, it was exhausted. Stretching out a central gimmick is a common sitcom sin. Our next show did the exact same thing, but its gimmick was a will they or won't they romance that went on for nearly a decade. 16. Who's the Boss?
And sometimes I love to take bubble baths.
Really?
Yeah.
You in a bubble bath? Oh, I always pictured you in the shower. I mean...
The 1980s loved a good high-concept sitcom, and Who's the Boss had one of the most memorable. Tony Michelli, a retired baseball player and widower from Brooklyn, decides to leave the city with his daughter, Samantha, for a better life. He ends up taking a job as a live-in housekeeper for a wealthy, divorced advertising executive named Angela Bauer in upscale Connecticut. The household was a mix of personalities. Tony's street smarts versus Angela's uptight sophistication, his tomboy daughter versus her nerdy son. But the entire show, from the first episode to the last, was built on one single, burning question. Will Tony and Angela ever admit they are in love and finally get together? This romantic tension was the fuel that powered the show for 8 seasons and 196 episodes. For years, the writers created an endless series of contrived obstacles and silly misunderstandings to keep the 2 main characters apart. The audience waited patiently, and waited, and waited. By the time Tony and Angela finally did become a couple late in the show's run, the magic had faded. The cute kid actors had grown into adults, and the will they or won't they premise had been stretched far beyond its breaking point. The series finale was particularly frustrating. After finally getting together, the story contrives a reason for them to break up, only to have Tony show up at Angela's door in the final seconds, leaving their future ambiguous. It was a weak and unsatisfying conclusion to a show that had spent years teasing a resolution it seemed afraid to deliver.